In this lesson, we're going to create an Internet Map Server application. We're also going to create a little bit of a story to go along with it. And that is, we want to look at land cover change between 1968 and 1995. We've already seen this data. So for this exercise, we're going to do some overlay, as well as creating a query, and then create our web page. Open up your Lesson 8 map that we looked at earlier, because that's already got our 1968 land use as well as our 1995 land cover. If we look at our land use table, the land cover, actually I'm going to right click on one of the tables first and fit the titles. So I'll go to best fit titles, so now we can read all the titles. The land cover is represented as numbers rather than letters. I'm going to change the type, and I'm going to convert that to a string. We're going to want these to be A, D, E, F, and W. So under your toolbar, your query toolbar, select landcov, and then select it where it's equal to, not A, we want it to be 1. Go back here and just type in 1, because I want to select all the agriculture. Now, under the transform toolbar, let's actually change the value of that landcov field. So we're going to fill landcov with the value A. We want to do the same thing for landcov 2, which we know is developed, and here we want to fill that with D. You'll want to do the same for extractive lands as forested lands. So here the extractive lands will make E, and forest, which is 4, we'll select those, make that F, and we'll do one more for the water features. So anything that's water or wetland has a code of 5, we're going to change that to W. So the next thing we want to do is go under drawing, and like we did in the earlier lesson, we're going to perform a topological overlay. In this case, we want to select all the objects in land and all the objects in LU68, and we'll perform a topological intersection. As we do that, it's going to create a new table called land2. We'll open up land2. Let's actually rename it, so right click and then click rename, and we'll call it land compare. We can drop that component in, and here you can see the topological overlay. I'm going to remove the other two maps, so right click on each of the tabs for the components and just remove them. So the only map, or the only drawing we have in our map right now is land compare. Let's change the cartographic representation. We'll use LC, which is the land cover type from 1995, and we'll select our theme XML like we did earlier. So now our map is colored to represent what the land cover looked like in 1995. The next thing is, let's create a new query. I'm going to call it change. And here I'm going to just type out a query, select star from land change, or land compare, where LC, which is the land cover from 1995, is equal to 1995 land use, and land cov, which is the value for the 1968 land cover, is going to equal the 1968 land use. Now those two things I wrote in brackets are parameters. This is a parameterized query, so I'm going to type the word parameters at the top and create those same boxes. So 1995 land use, and that's a text field, and the other parameter is 1968 land use, and that's also a text field. Now you're going to notice that there's an error in this script, so we'll look at that in just a second. We'll close it up, and now that we're selected on it, it says unknown column when I hit our exclamation point button. The reason is I put a space before 1968. Let's run it again, and here you can see the parameter box comes up, asking us what the 1995 and 1968 land cover was. I chose those that were agriculture in 1968 and 1995, and what you can see now are those areas that haven't changed over that time. Let's look at the areas that were agriculture in 1968, but then converted to developed in 1995. And here you can see those features are selected. Okay, this gives us a bit of a story now to work with as we create our website. So under File, Export, select Web Page. And here we have to know where the web page is going to exist. Well, I'm going to put it in my local internet directory, inetpub www.root, and I've got a directory already created called test site, so I'm just going to throw it in there. I'm going to include that query change. Now this query is going to be available for the internet use. And there's other things that we can include on the web page, like a legend, like a find tool, an info tool. We can show the different layers, turn them on and off. So I'm going to put that in there. You can also refresh a component if it's linked to some live data. You can see the different scripting languages that we can use, as well as a few different templates that are available. And finally, I'm going to enter a title. Call this land cover change map. And we'll create a subtitle. Training data set. And hit OK. So that actually is going to create our web page. It says the web page has been created successfully, and that's created all the JavaScript and ASP code to create the map. One thing I didn't do was save the data, so we'll call this Lesson 8, and I'm going to put it in my C temp drive. You could have also called it something else. And now that it's saved, as a different name perhaps, we need to let Manifold know where it's located. So under the C inetpub www.root test site directory, and this is where all my internet stuff is, I'm going to go to the location where it says File. This is a configuration file that tells me the size of the maps as well as some of the other features. And here I saved it, and I told it that the file is in ctemp lesson 8. So now the Internet Map Server knows where to look for that map file to get all the information. I'm going to go back to ctemp lesson 8, and here I've got to set the user permissions so that an internet user is actually able to access and look at this data. This is something you might need help from your system administrator with. Right-clicking on the properties for lesson 8.map, I'm going to go to security, and here I'm going to have to add a new user. I've already done it. I didn't want to show you how we do it because it reveals some things on my machine, but you can see there's an internet guest account now called iuser_lembo. The Manifold help file actually does a pretty good job of explaining how to do this, so I recommend you take a look at that. Now I can go into the website itself, and here my startup page always is up at Yahoo, and it's localhost test site, and here's our map. So this is just a basic template, and you can see we can zoom in and zoom out. We can also zoom to the full view, click on information, and the info box will pop up. We can also use a find tool to find all the land cover. That's say agriculture, and those all pop up. Or we can go and turn off a layer or turn one on. And here I'm going to use that SQL parameter query. Notice the parameter actually entered the values we saw in the parameter box earlier. So I'm going to find developed land in 1995 and agricultural land in 1968. And here you can see those come up. So this is a very basic look at an Internet Map Server. With more programming, you can actually make it do quite a number of things. Here I'm going to look at forest land that turned into developed. So again, we've actually created a little story and a little application that users can use over the Internet.